When a billionaire's call went wrong, help my mom. A twist of fate changes everything forever. In the heart of Manhattan, something unimaginable was unfolding. The glimmering lights of the city, with their promises of wealth and ambition, basked in eerie silence as an unthinkable call echoed through the night. Help my mom. The desperation in the voice was unmistakable. Millions in the bank couldn't shield him from this heart-wrenching panic. It was the sort of call that made your stomach twist, one that sent chills through the crowd at the high-rise gala, leaving people frozen in shock. Jonathan Blake, the billionaire everyone envied, was now a man on the edge. He paced furiously, his tailored suit wrinkling in distress. A looming anxiety tightened around him like a noose. The chatter around him faded, the clinking of champagne glasses becoming muffled sounds, like they were underwater. For Jonathan, this night wasn't filled with celebrations but with fear of losing his only family left. The party felt hollow as he dialed the number again, praying he wouldn't be met with silence. Mom? Mom? His voice broke, each ring a hammer hitting his resolve. What could have happened? A heart attack? An accident? The vivid images raced through his mind, intensifying his panic. A woman fainted nearby, mirroring the dread that swept over everyone. They sensed it, felt it in their bones. A rich man's misfortune could shatter any illusion of safety they clung to, and then came an unsettling whisper from the crowd. Did you hear? They say he's not just a billionaire but he's hiding something dark. The words lingered in the air, thick and heavy. It sparked intrigue, weaving through the onlookers like a creeping shadow. Eyes darted around as if searching for the truth buried beneath the glamour of wealth. What dark secret had Jonathan Blake covered? Waves of curiosity washed over the gathering. There was an undercurrent of tension, an electric charge that invited speculation. With a raised eyebrow and sly smirk, a sharp-dressed man stood nearby, unabashedly feeding the fires of gossip. I mean, with all that cash, who knows what skeletons he has in his closet? It was like a live wire, and the crowd buzzed with unsaid thoughts, their imaginations spiraling endlessly. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Jonathan was still on the line, a taut string ready to snap. His heart raced as the realization hit him. The stakes were higher than he thought. What if this night marked not just a personal tragedy but a public spectacle that would plunge him into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons? He glanced around, saw the curious stares, felt the weight of their judgment hanging in the air. Hope flickered like a candle in the storm. What if he could reach her in time? Yet, as the clock ticked on, uncertainty loomed just as heavy. A flicker of movement caught his eye. A mysterious figure watched from the shadows, a woman wrapped in crimson. Who was she? Did she know more than she let on? The room felt colder, and he could almost hear his heartbeat echo in the silence. What deadly turn awaited him in this web of wealth and desperation? The night was just beginning, and the answers seemed farther away than ever. What would be revealed next? Jonathan's heart thudded violently as he glanced toward the woman in crimson. She stood there, draped in shadows, an enigma amidst the chaos of flashing cameras and murmurs. At that moment, the room pulsed with tension, like a tightly pulled bowstring ready to snap. Excuse me, he muttered to nobody in particular, weaving through the crowd, dodging glances and whispered accusations. The gala, once a showcase of wealth and elite connections, transformed into a breeding ground for speculation, all eyes glued to the unraveling drama. Jonathan could feel them, excitement and horror mixed into one. Help my mom. The words echoed in his mind, drowning out the frivolity around him. Panic surged. What if he didn't make it in time? Thoughts raced through his mind like cars speeding down a highway, each one a potential disaster. He was the embodiment of helplessness, an accomplished billionaire chasing shadows. As he reached the edge of the dance floor, he caught a quick look at the woman wrapped in crimson. Her expression was unreadable, glinting with secrets. Was she a friend or a foe? Every instinct screamed at him to approach, yet something held him back, a gnawing uncertainty. Jonathan. A familiar voice cut through the swirling noise. It was Vanessa, his public relations advisor, her usual confidence overtaken by concern. Her voice shook slightly. You need to go. The police will be arriving soon. We can't let this spiral. Where's my mom, Vanessa? Frustration bubbled up, and he could feel his grip on resolve slipping. I don't know. But I heard something. There might be more happening than you realize. Her words hung heavy, even as the crowd's whispers drowned them out. She bit her lip, glancing over her shoulder. You need to get ahead of this. Jonathan took a deep breath, his mind spinning with possibilities. He couldn't afford to dwell on the rumors. The crowd thickened behind him, curiosity morphing into a palpable hunger for scandal. His wealth, his status, all were suddenly crumbling under the weight of his mother's peril. He shot another look at the woman in red. She seemed to beckon him, discreet yet insistent. Was this the clue he needed? Was she the link connecting him to the chaos? If he could just find out what she knew, maybe he could turn the tide and save his mother. As his feet moved toward her, he stepped onto the cool marble floor, anxiety thrumming in his veins. The moment felt surreal. Each step echoed against the polished surface, mimicking the heartbeat urging him to hurry, to capture her attention. Just as he closed the distance, she turned sharply. The look on her face hit him like a jolt of electricity, a mixture of recognition and apprehension. Jonathan, she said, her voice low and urgent. You need to listen. It's not what you think. Before she could finish, a loud crash reverberated through the venue, a glass shattered, followed by a deafening silence that enveloped the gala. All eyes turned toward the source of the noise. Some gasped, others murmured in disbelief. There, in the midst of the chaos, a massive figure loomed, a security guard, muscle-bound and stern, who looked ready to pounce. Everyone, stay calm. He barked, but the mounting dread seemed to take hold as people began to recoil. Your mother is in danger, Jonathan. The woman in red pressed on, her eyes wide with urgency. The ground seemed to shift beneath him, the air thick with an impending sense of doom. What are you talking about? Jonathan demanded. And then, before she could speak again, the lights flickered, and the room plunged into darkness. Shouts erupted from the crowd, confusion mingling with fear as the world spiraled around him. In that moment of peril, Jonathan felt a heavy weight settle in his gut. His mother's fate, his secrets, and this ominous figure in red all twisted together, forming an inescapable web. As he stumbled through the darkness, one thought pierced through his mind. How much was he willing to risk to save the one person he loved most? And somewhere in the shadows, a voice whispered, the truth can kill. What more awaited him in this descent into uncertainty? The darkness swallowed him whole, a suffocating blanket that made it impossible to breathe. Panic clawed at Jonathan's throat as he heard the frantic whispers rising around him, feeble in the face of growing terror. Stay calm. He shouted into the abyss, but only silence responded, punctuated by the thud of his heart. He fumbled in the dark, desperate to find where the woman had gone. Dozens of voices were rising together, clashing and tangling in a storm of anxiety. He could feel the heat of bodies brushing past him, caught in a frenzy of fear, and then light. Fingers of warmth broke through the blackness as the emergency lights flickered to life. A dim glow illuminated the crowd, revealing faces etched with shock and confusion. Jonathan's breath hitched. The tension in the room crackled like static, each person eyeing the others, searching for understanding. There. He spotted the woman in crimson, a fiery beacon against the fading shadows. Her serene posture stood in sharp contrast to the panic surrounding them. For a fleeting moment, he found solace in her presence. He pushed his way through the throng, each step driven by a singular mission: find answers. Jonathan. She called, urgency threading through her voice. What is happening? Where's my mom? He took her shoulders, grounding himself in her eyes. Listen to me. She insisted, her expression now fierce. Your mother's life is at risk. I can help you, but we need to move now. He could barely process her words. What do you mean? Who's after her? There are forces at play you can't comprehend, she replied, glancing furtively over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to emerge from the dark. They're in this room. And they know you're searching for her. A wave of dread washed over him. He felt exposed, vulnerable. Who are you? He pressed, frustration burning through him. Why should I trust you? Because I know what they want, and it's not just your mother, she shot back, her voice heated. It's you too, Jonathan. You're wrapped in this too deep to escape on your own. An icy grip closed around his heart. What do you mean? There's a connection, something you inherited, she said, her words heavy with implication. But the gala was the turning point, the moment everything spiraled out of control. Jonathan's chest tightened. What do I have to do with this? I'm just an investor. An investor? No, you're much more than that. Your family holds the key. Her eyes bore into him, urgency mounting as she stepped closer. And if we don't get out of here, you'll lose everything: your mother, your fortune, your life. Before he could respond, the lights flickered ominously again, plunging them into darkness. The chatter escalated into screams and chaos erupted. Follow me. The woman urged, her voice cutting through the fray. He felt her hand grip his wrist and urge him forward, weaving deftly through the madness. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to search for his mother, but he found himself helplessly thrust into the current of uncertainty. The crowd was suffocating, pulsing with panic. Jonathan's breath hitched once more as fear bloomed like a dark flower in his chest. Just as they reached the nearest exit, a powerful figure loomed in front of them, silhouetted against the flickering lights. The security guard more imposing up close, eyes burning with authority. Stop right there. He commanded, his voice resonating through the noise. Jonathan's heart plummeted as realization dawned. They were trapped, caught between the burning need to escape and the looming threat of discovery. Who do you think you're dealing with? The woman in red whispered to him urgently, her grip tightening on his wrist. You have to decide, Jonathan. Are you willing to fight for the truth? And in that moment, Jonathan knew the stakes had never been higher. Deception lurked around every corner, and his life was spiraling out of control. What lay ahead could shatter everything he thought he knew. As the guard stepped forward, Jonathan's resolve flared. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for the lurking shadows of the unknown. Would he dare to confront the truth, or would he be forced to pay the ultimate price? The guard moved closer, his towering frame casting a shadow over Jonathan and the woman in red. The fearful distance shrank, making the room feel remarkably small. Jonathan barely breathed, grappling with the woman's fierce grip and uncertainty swelling in his mind. Let us go, she urged, her voice unwavering. But Jonathan hesitated, his thoughts a storm as terror washed over him. No, wait. I can't leave, he protested, stepping back, his heart racing. My mom could be lost in this chaos. The guard's eyes narrowed, and his jaw clenched. Step aside, lady. This is a private event. You both need to leave now. Shut up, Jonathan yelled, channeling a spark of defiance. It struck him hard. He wouldn't let fear dictate his next move. This isn't over. You're hiding something. With that, he surged forward, breaking free of the woman's grip to confront the guard. Amidst the din of panicked voices and clashes of feet, Jonathan felt a volcanic rage rise within him. He fought against the crippling panic that swirled around him like a tempest, forcing him to stand tall. But the woman's voice shattered his bravado. Jonathan, don't. If he gets you. Her words were cut off as the guard lunged, reaching for him. Jonathan ducked, adrenaline surging as he narrowly dodged the outstretched arms. The people around them became a frenzy of chaos, their screams blending into an indistinguishable howl. In a split-second decision, Jonathan raced towards the back exit, his instincts propelling him forward. The initial surge of panic transformed into a driving purpose. He couldn't turn back now, not when his mother's life was on the line. "Get back!" he shouted, pushing through the frenzied crowd, fervent energy guiding his every move. Suddenly, a surge of people crashed against him, throwing him off balance. Screams erupted. An overhead spotlight flickered, illuminating the chaos around him. "Jonathan!" the woman yelled, her voice lost in the cacophony. He caught a glimpse of her, her face twisted in concern, but he had to keep moving. He slammed against the door, his heart pounding as he slipped through the narrow opening. Once outside, a blast of cold air hit him like a wave, clearing his mind. The night was dark, but the urgency of the moment forced him to breathe deeply. He turned back, searching the chaos that was the gala behind him. The crowd within was smothered in the shadows, chaos living like a monster ready to devour. Had he lost her? He pulled at his hair, frustration boiling. "Where's my mom?" He breathed vehemently, shaking, amped with desperation. He felt the world closing in again. A shadow moved near the entrance, catching his attention. Jonathan squinted into the darkness. It was her, the woman in red, her face radiant even in the weak light spilling from inside the building. "Jonathan! This way!" She beckoned, urgency laced in her voice. Jonathan hesitated, battling his instincts. But something deeper urged him forward, instinct battling fear. He rushed to her, ready to listen, determined to uncover this web of deception that threatened his family. Just when he reached her, the ground beneath them rumbled violently. A distant roar echoed across the empty street. An explosion? Was it inside the gala? The woman's eyes widened in horror. "We have to get out of here. Now!" The clarity of that moment shattered everything. His heart raced wildly as adrenaline rushed through him. What was that? "Are we safe?" "Safe isn't the right word anymore," she responded sharply, urgency palpable. "What's at stake is bigger than we imagined. You're not just running from them, you're standing at the edge of a precipice. If we don't get ahead of this, it's not just your mother at risk, it's everyone around you." He tried to process her words. "Tell me what you know," Jonathan demanded, desperation gripping him tighter than before. "I will, but you must trust me blindly. We need to reach the car, it's our only hope," she said, dragging him toward the rear alley, where the moonlight barely pierced through the chaos. As they sped into the shadows, he could hear faint sirens wailing in the distance. A sinking feeling settled in his stomach. The stakes were higher than he ever thought. There was no turning back, and a chilling thought struck him. What truth had he stumbled onto? As they rounded the corner, a group of figures appeared ahead, blocking their escape. Jonathan's breath caught, realizing the path to answers was going to be far more dangerous than he had anticipated. "Who are they?" he whispered, his resolve shaking amidst a sudden swell of terror. "Enemies, Jonathan. Powerful ones. And they want you both." The confrontation was looming, certainty unraveling at his feet. Would they stand and fight? Or would fear wrap its hands around them again, pulling them into the shadows? He swallowed hard, mind racing. Would he allow fear to dictate his story, or would he seize the moment and confront the unknown? The figures ahead shifted slightly, their faces obscured by the shadows but their intentions clear. Jonathan's heart pounded in his ears, deafening him to the sounds of chaos behind them. "What do we do?" he gasped, stepping closer to the woman in red, the only semblance of safety he had in this nightmare. "Stay calm. Follow my lead," she urged, her voice steady despite the fear lacing his gut. Before he could respond, the nearest figure, a man in a sleek suit with an icy gaze, took a step forward, a predatory smile curling on his lips. Well. Look who has wandered away from the party." She clenched Jonathan's arm tighter. "We can't let them take us. Move." With that, she pulled him toward the side alley, where the shadows seemed to deep like a waiting maw. They darted past the figures, who hesitated just long enough to exchange glances. The woman was quick and agile, but Jonathan stumbled, tripping over his own feet. Panic seized him, the sound of his racing heart drowning out all other thoughts. "Keep going," she urged, glancing back to see how far they were from their pursuers. Jonathan powered through, fueled by desperation. He had to keep moving, had to find his mom, had to escape this tangled mess of violence and deceit. Rounding a corner, they almost collided with a metal dumpster, the sharp stench hitting him like a wall. "Where's the car?" he asked, gasping for air. "Just a little further," she replied, dragging him past an alleyway filled with flickering neon signs that cast eerie shadows. She glanced over her shoulder, anxiety threading through her features. "We need to hurry before they catch up." Behind them, a shout shattered the tense air, piercing through the mounting dread. "Stop them." The command echoed, sending chills racing down his spine. Jonathan's thoughts raced. They were closing in on them. They needed a plan. He cast a glance around, hoping for an escape route, anything to create distance between them and the figures pursuing them. Suddenly, he remembered something: the emergency phone numbers his mom had drilled into him since he could remember. "What's the plan?" he asked, pulling his phone from his pocket, his fingers trembling. "Keep it on silent. We need to be stealthy," she hissed fervently. "Once we reach the car, I'll tell you what you need to do." They rounded another corner, and Jonathan's heart dropped. Ahead of them, their only route out was blocked: a massive truck, front-facing them, engulfing the alleyway. The woman cursed under her breath. "I didn't know they'd set up a blockade here. We could have found another way," she muttered while scanning the situation desperately. Jonathan felt every nerve in his body strain. "We can't go back. Not now." "Then we're improvising," she declared, her gaze fierce. "Follow me." She bolted to the side of the truck, narrowly avoiding the beams of light sweeping down the alley, searchlights searching for them, looking to snare them back into the clutches of their assailants. Jonathan followed her into a narrow gap beside the truck, pressing himself against the cold metal. He could hear the distant sirens inching closer and the indistinct chatter of voices. They were outnumbered. Every sense told him they were walking into a trap. "Where do we go now?" His voice was a whisper, tight with fear. "We wait." She leaned in closer, her breath ragged and warm against his ear. "I have a contact nearby. But it's going to take a moment." "Wait for what?" he asked nervously. "Just trust me," she replied, her whisper laced with urgency. As the distant voices drew closer, Jonathan felt the weight of despair weigh on him, but he couldn't falter. The figures' footsteps echoed ominously as they passed their hiding spot, the tension spilling out into the air. Jonathan's mind raced as he heard snippets of their conversation, threats slipping from their lips like venom. "We'll find them. We must silence them. The boy can't know the truth." Jonathan felt the blood drain from his face. "What truth?" he asked almost silently, his heart thundering. The implications clawed at his insides. Before she could answer, a sudden crash rang out from somewhere down the alley, a distraction, a momentary break in the relentless pursuit. The woman seized the moment. Now! To the right. They stumbled into the unlit pathway, the darkness swallowing them whole once again, but the shadow of dread loomed larger than ever. What awaited them at the end of this dark corner? Would they find a way out, or was the truth lurking far worse than he could imagine? Jonathan felt his chest constrict as they sprinted forward. The shadows watched, and the chase was far from over. "I need to know what's going on," he shouted, desperation rising. "Once we're in the clear, but for now just trust me." But could he really trust her? As they pushed further into the depths of the night, Jonathan realized that the answers he sought may be the very thing that could consume him. Would he emerge into light, or would darkness swallow him whole? And even if he made it out, would it be worth the cost? The darkness enveloped them like a thick fog, making every breath feel heavier as Jonathan and the woman weaved through the maze of alleys. The chaos of the streets around them faded, leaving behind a suffocating silence pierced only by their hurried footsteps. Jonathan's thoughts raced, his heart echoed the urgency of their flight. "Where are we going?" he panted, adrenaline fueling him just enough to keep pace. She glanced back, and for a moment, Jonathan caught a glimpse of fear in her eyes, one that felt all too real. "Just trust me," was all she said again, determination hardening her voice. they ducked into a narrow passageway, the walls pressed close, brick cold against his skin. The woman's grip was steady on his wrist, guiding him through the shadows like she knew this place intimately. "We'll be safe here." "Just for a minute," she assured him, her eyes scanning for any movement outside that he wanted to scream, to demand answers. But the fear held him mute, and all he could do was watch her. Her presence was a paradox, strength wrapped in vulnerability. For the first time, he noticed a small tattoo peeking from beneath her sleeve, a jagged design that resembled a thorny vine. "What does it mean?" he blurted, trying to distract himself from the pursuit. She met his gaze, hesitation fluttering in her eyes. "It's a reminder," she replied softly. "That sometimes, survival means making sacrifices." Jonathan's heart sank, the weight of her words settling deep in his stomach. What sacrifices had she made? What would he have to give up to escape this? A sudden sound jolted him from his thoughts, a vehicle screeching to a halt, tires skidding against the pavement not far from their hiding place. His breath caught in his throat as he strained to listen. The fashionable voices of the figures they escaped echoed nearby, growing louder, searching, relentless. "They're getting closer," he whispered, panic clawing at his chest. "We need to keep moving," she urged, her voice low and firm. "Just a little further down this path. There's an exit." The sound of footsteps grew louder, indistinct chatter mixing with the night air, chilling him. "What if they catch us?" "They won't," she said with more confidence than he felt. "Just follow my lead, okay?" Nods were all he could muster as they darted from their hiding spot, slipping back into the alleyways, the pounding of their hearts keeping time with every hurried step. The chase morphed into a sinister game of cat and mouse, and Jonathan felt the thrill of fear ignite within him, shadowed by an instinctive need to protect himself and the woman beside him. Suddenly, she stopped, her eyes narrowing as she gestured for silence. Ahead, their route opened into a slightly more illuminated street, pedestrians occasionally filtering through, unaware of the danger lurking just beyond their view. But it was a risky decision. Too many eyes. Too many witnesses. "We wait here," she whispered tightly, pressing herself against the cold stone wall beside him, his breath hitched, feeling the uncertainty of every moment stretch. "What if they see us?" "They won't, trust me," she insisted, her tone brokering no argument. As if summoned by their doubt, a low thrum of an engine sounded nearby, accompanied by the faint yet unmistakable honk of a car horn. Jonathan's mind raced. What if that's them? Just then, a figure emerged from the other side of the street. Tall and imposing, the man scanned the area, his gaze sweeping across the street until it landed on the entrance of their alley. Jonathan's stomach twisted at the realization. This couldn't be. The precision of the search indicated intent. "Run," she whispered urgently, eyes wide as she pulled him away from the wall. "Now." The pair bolted back into the alley, urgency propelling them like pinballs into the dark unknown. They dived deeper, voices from the street giving chase, echoing behind them in their relentless hunt. "Over there. I see them." It was a shout, fierce and demanding. Jonathan's heart thundered. What now? The dim light of a flickering street lamp glowed ahead. It could be an exit. Or another snare. But a voice deep inside urged him onward, urged him to confront whatever lay in wait. As they hit the light, breathless and desperate, Jonathan stopped short, stunned. In front of them stood a sleek black car. "It's here. Get in," she cried, urgency flooding her voice that he hesitated, his heart filled with uncertainty. "Are you sure it's safe?" But before she could answer, the shadows behind surged forward, dark figures cutting through the light like blades. "Get in," she shouted again, her eyes pleading. Jonathan didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew he had to jump, to trust her, to plunge into the unknown once more. Just as he reached for the door, a chorus of cries broke the air, and a gunshot rang out, shattering the fragile moment of hope. What have I done? Jonathan thought, fear seizing, threatening to unravel everything he believed. But when he turned back, she was gone, vanished into the depths, leaving him with ominous silence. And somewhere in that silence, the truth was waiting. The sound of the gunshot echoed in Jonathan's ears, a booming reminder of the chaos behind him. For an instant, time froze. He stood there, heart pounding, mind racing, terror clawing at his insides. The world fell away as he grasped the handle of the sleek car door, his pulse thrumming under his skin. But she was gone. The stark realization hit him like a cold wave. Get in. The command rang in his ears, persistent and desperate. The shadows closed in, they had no time to waste. With a surge of adrenaline, he jumped into the back seat, a mix of relief and fear flooding his veins. The interior was dark and sleek, the scent of leather punctuated the humid air. He barely had time to settle when the engine roared to life, the driver already navigating the car away from the light. Drive! Jonathan shouted, urgency spilling from his lips. We have to get out of here. The driver, a man with sharp features and clipped hair, nodded without speaking. The city whirled by like a fast-forward reel, blurs of neon lights, streaks of people, the sense of safety just out of reach. Where is she? Jonathan pressed, panic rising in his chest. His thoughts tumbled like disturbed leaves. Had she been caught? Was she even alive? What did they do to her? Breathe, the driver said, his tone calm but the edginess in his eyes contradicted his words. You need to trust the process. We're heading to a safe location. But she... Jonathan's voice faltered. I can't leave her behind. I understand, but right now, the priority is your safety, the driver replied curtly, his attention divided between them and the road. We'll come back for her. Forcing his emotions down, Jonathan's mind whirred. He glanced out the window. How could this be happening? He was just an ordinary guy, caught in these extraordinary circumstances. Little did he know that the ordinary world he yearned for was about to be forever altered. They entered into a more desolate area, the lights dimming, the space around them feeling more ominous. His stomach churned as they pulled onto a deserted street that led to an abandoned warehouse. Jonathan's heart dropped with an unsettling thud. What is this place? He asked, fear tangling with curiosity. Safe haven, the driver replied, but his eyes darted constantly, scanning for unseen threats. We'll regroup here. Get ready. Jonathan's existence felt surreal as they parked. The driver shut off the engine and focused on him, urgency brimming in his gaze. You need to tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Who was she? She's important, Jonathan stuttered, grappling with how to explain. I don't even know her last name. But she's brave, and she has something that they want. I can't let them get her. The driver's eyebrows raised slightly at Jonathan's revelation, a flicker of recognition flashing across his face. Then we need to figure out what that something is. It might be the key to everything. There's more at stake than just your lives. Before Jonathan could respond, a muffled sound broke through the air, pulling both men's attentions. The soft yet solid thud of footsteps echoed outside the vehicle. Jonathan's insides clenched. Is it them? He whispered, fear coating each word. The driver's eyes darkened. Stay low. We need to make sure it's safe before we move. Jonathan dropped to the floor, adrenaline flooding his system once more. Low voices drifted closer, he was straining to hear. What if they found her? What if they found him? Was this all a trap? His heart raced as he searched for some sort of weapon, some way to protect the lingering flicker of hope that she was still alive. The voices paused, and Jonathan held his breath, listening intently. Then, a loud bang sounded against the warehouse door, silencing everything. It echoed like a death knell, instilling a fresh wave of fear within him. Get ready, the driver whispered, but Jonathan was already so far gone, dread coursing through him like ice. Everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. As the footsteps grew louder, blending with the pounding of his heart, Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of a dark precipice. With the door slamming open, shadows poured in. Only one question lingered in his mind. Who was coming for him now? The darkness tightened around him, anticipating the truth it was desperately trying to unveil. The door swung wide, and the glare of a flashlight pierced through the thick darkness inside the car. Jonathan's heart thudded violently against his ribcage. He squeezed his eyes shut, drowning in his own fear, pressing himself against the cold leather seat as if it could somehow swallow him whole. "Clear." A voice barked from outside, rough and commanding. The footsteps shifted, growing more calculated. Jonathan caught a glimpse of shadowy figures approaching, silhouetted against the faint glow of the streetlights outside the warehouse. Panic gripped him as adrenaline coursed through his veins, urging him to act. "Stay quiet," the driver hissed, sliding low in his seat. Jonathan barely nodded, the lump in his throat growing heavier by the second. He longed to reach for something, anything, to defend himself, but his hands were trembling too hard to steady himself. Suddenly, the sound of glass shattering echoed into the room, tearing through the tension like a jagged knife. Some part of Jonathan feared it was the end. His heart skipped as dread swallowed him whole. The figures at the entrance surged forward, taking command of the space. Jonathan heard the driver whisper to himself, "No, no, no." The flashlight beam flickered across the interior, illuminating their faces momentarily, a band of hardened men, eyes steely with intent. One stepped forward, looking around with malicious curiosity. "Search it," he ordered, and a couple of thugs stepped into the warehouse. Jonathan could barely breathe, fear gripping him, threatening to choke out whatever hope he clung to. "Who the hell are these guys?" he murmured. "Just stay down," the driver warned, his voice barely a whisper. "We need a distraction." Jonathan's mind raced, piecing together fragments of their conversation back in the car. Those men outside, they had to be after the girl. What do they want with her? He thought, but that question faded into the noise of gunshots echoing far off in the distance. The driver suddenly reached beneath his seat, fingers fumbling. Jonathan's heart raced faster. If the driver was armed, he'd have to act fast. Then again, an impulse surged through him, not just for his own life but for hers. What if she was in that building? At that moment, a loud crash erupted from the far side of the warehouse. The men turned toward the sound, momentarily distracted. Jonathan seized the chance, adrenaline propelling him forward. Quietly, he pulled open the passenger door, slipping out just as another figure, barely managing to fit through, dashed inside. A woman, tall, fierce, with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Jonathan!" she shouted, voice trembling but determined. It was her, the brave heart of the storm he had been trying to save. "Get in the car," he hissed urgently. His instincts kicked in, leading him to pull her low behind the vehicle, just as the thugs turned back around, eyes wide with shock. "What the?" one of them shouted, moving toward them. The driver popped up, gun drawn. "Move!" he yelled, firing a shot that rang like thunder through the enclosed space. Chaos erupted, bodies scrambled, and Jonathan felt the world closing in as the gunfire rippled through the warehouse. The woman's hand found his, squeezing so tightly it threatened to break him. "What's the plan?" she gasped, glancing back at the advancing men now transforming into shadows of menace. "We need to survive. We get out together," Jonathan replied, adrenaline surging through him again. He pulled her closer, their eyes locking, a split-second connection confirming they were both in this together, trapped in a moment of raw vulnerability. "Then let us go," she replied, and it was more than an agreement, it was a declaration. Jonathan turned to the driver, who was still holding ground. "We can't stand here," he yelled. But as he spoke, the sound of approaching vehicles broke through the chaos outside, heavy engines reverberating through the foundation of the warehouse. Panic washed over Jonathan again. Reinforcements? The thugs would be caught between a rock and a hard place. Were they really out of options? "Move. Now!" the driver barked, gripping Jonathan's shoulders and pulling him toward the building's darkness. "We need to get to the back exit." The tension hung thick in the air, and the woman tugged at Jonathan's arm, urging him forward as hope flickered like a flame amidst the shadows cascading around them. But as they rounded the corner, Jonathan heard something that made him freeze, familiar voices filtering in from the outside. "They went this way." Hope shattered, replaced by a darker question echoing in his mind: who were they running from, and how did they know they were here? In that moment, Jonathan knew they were deeper into the nightmare than they had ever imagined. The air was thick with tension as Jonathan and the woman pressed against the wall, hearts racing as the men outside drew closer. Every breath was a reminder of how precariously they balanced on the edge of calamity. Jonathan's mind raced, decoding every sound that filtered through the dim musky warehouse. "Who are they?" the woman whispered, her eyes wide. "I don't know," he muttered, grim determination flooding his voice. "But we can't wait to find out." The driver leaned out from behind the doorway, trying to assess the situation. "We'll have to split up. Draw them away." "No." Jonathan shot back, shaking his head. "We stick together. It's the only chance we've got." The driver shot him a wild look. "You think they care about splitting us up? We're already outnumbered here." Before he could retort, the door behind them banged open hard, echoing like gunfire through the silence. Shadows moved rapidly, and the driver snapped back, raised weapon at the ready. "Check the back." A voice barked from outside. "They're here." Another shouted, voice angry and determined. Jonathan's heart dropped as icy fear gripped him. He could feel it, an instinctual dread that coiled around his gut. Maybe it was the connection he had with the woman. Maybe it was the knowledge that they were entwined in something far more dangerous than either had anticipated. Either way, something had to be done. "Listen," he urged, gripping her shoulders tightly. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Her chin jutted out, resolved. "Always." With that, Jonathan grabbed her hand and pulled her alongside him as they hurried deeper into the shadows, away from the approaching chaos. Around them, the sounds of shouting men only fueled their urgency. Every corner they turned heightened Jonathan's anxiety, transforming adrenaline into a palpable force that pushed them forward. They dodged debris and weaving through the dimly lit aisles of the warehouse, but Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that ominous eyes were tracking their every move. Then, unexpectedly, a deafening crash shattered the night. It was like thunder, rattling Jonathan's bones and sending debris flying. "Go! Go!" The driver bellowed, his voice strained as he sprinted ahead, firing short bursts into the darkness. Jonathan hesitated, fear crawling under his skin, instinct threatening to keep him rooted in place. But his hand in hers was tethering enough to pull him forward again. They didn't have time to think. They rounded another corner, and Jonathan slammed into a metal door, pushing it open, only to reveal a pitch-black alley. Outside, the night air felt like a blow to the senses, sharp with tension and impending doom. Voices erupted behind them. "They're here somewhere. Don't let them escape." The sound ignited panic. Jonathan glanced at the woman, resolve still etched on her face. "We have to keep going." Suddenly, a sharp scream shattered the night, echoing from somewhere close by. It echoed through Jonathan's mind, twisting his gut. Was it the girl? "We can't leave without knowing more," he blurted, debating whether to follow the sound or flee into the night. "Are you insane?" the driver shouted, panic lacing his words. "We don't have time. They'll be on us in seconds." But Jonathan felt something shifting within him. A spark ignited, a sense of purpose driving him forward into the chaos ahead, wildly searching for answers even at the brink of danger. "I can't," he began, but before he could finish, a figure stepped into the alleyway, silhouetted against the glow of streetlights, one of the thugs, face twisted in rage. "Found you," he snarled, raising a weapon. Jonathan had only a heartbeat to react. He shoved the woman behind him and lunged. The clash felt electric in the air, desperation fueling him as they dove into a twisted embrace of chaos, shadows racing around them. As they grappled, another scream pierced the air. It was close, unmistakably human, sending chills down his spine. "Stop!" he shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the rage around him. In a struggle, Jonathan wrested the thug's weapon, adrenaline coursing. "Tell me what you want," he roared, fighting against the darkness that enveloped the moment. The thug's laughter echoed darkly. "You've signed your death warrant, kid." And then, just as the reality of their peril pounded in his ears, the world shattered again, glass kissed by destruction, the ominous boom of footsteps rushing in. Jonathan's heart slammed as a new wave of figures emerged from the shadows. This wasn't help, it was more danger. The questions spiraled in his mind: how many more lives were at stake, and just how far would he go to protect them all? As the thugs converged with an intent more sinister than he ever anticipated, Jonathan realized he had to make a choice. How much was he willing to sacrifice to save them both? That choice hung heavy as he braced himself for what lay ahead. His pulse raced with uncertainty, and amidst the storm, he resolved to fight. "We don't back down now," the woman said, her grip firm on his arm. "We turn and fight." But what they didn't know was that this battle had just begun. As the world swirled into chaos, Jonathan felt that heavy weight of fear shift into something fierce. He was done running. He wouldn't let their shadows dictate his life any longer. "We don't back down," he echoed, feeling the warmth of the woman's hand in his, giving him a strange sense of courage. Together, they formed a united front, two souls against the encroaching darkness. The thugs closed in, but Jonathan's heart thudded with purpose. "What do you want?" he shouted, directing all his confusion and anger at the man who had taunted him. The thug's smile twisted into a sinister grin. "Just doing my job, kid. You're in over your head." Jonathan felt the adrenaline surge again. "You're about to regret that." With that, he sprang forward, throwing a fist that found solid contact, shoving the thug back. Chaos erupted as men scrambled around them, but Jonathan pushed through the panic, the need to protect spurring him on more than any fear. "Let us go," he shouted to the woman beside him, pulling her along as they dashed deeper into the shadowy alleyways. As they ran, he could hear the chaos behind them, a chaotic symphony of shouting men, angry barbs, and the heavy thud of boots. But they kept moving, there was no stopping now. The escape became a blur of frantic heartbeats and cold breaths, as if a tidal wave of danger was rushing at them. Every twist and turn pulled them farther from the safety of the chaos, but it also led them deeper into uncertainty. Then the distant wail of sirens broke through the din, offering a hint of hope. "If we can make it to the main street, we'll be all right," he said, pushing himself harder. "Just a few more blocks." They closed the distance, legs burning and lungs gasping, when suddenly, two figures loomed at the end of the alley, reinforcements for the thugs. Jonathan stumbled to a halt, taking a defensive stance. "We have to fight," he said, glancing at the woman. "What about my mother?" she asked, eyes blazing with desperation. The reminder hit him like a sledgehammer. "We're not leaving until we find her." Determination replaced fear. He understood that if his mother meant everything to him, her loved ones meant the same for her. He turned and bolted again, each corner they turned echoing with newfound determination. They could hear the sirens growing louder, a promise of safety was drawing nearer. Just when hope seemed to grow legs, a sudden crash of breaking glass thundered in the air. A trap. Jonathan felt adrenaline surge in anticipation. "Keep going," he yelled, launching himself forward. As they pushed through the chaos, the thugs behind them were caught off guard by the sudden law enforcement arrival. A loud voice commanded the thugs to stand down, creating the briefest opening. "Now!" Jonathan yelled, pulling the woman into his arms as they shot up out of the alley. The lights from patrol cars painted the world around them in surreal hues of blue and red. Relief washed over him, but that relief was short-lived when he spotted movement out of the corner of his eye, a figure darting towards them. Clenching her hand tighter, Jonathan braced for confrontation, but the woman suddenly gasped in shock. "Mom!" The embrace was instantaneous, a whirlwind of sobs, relief, and chaotic joy. "I was so afraid," the mother cried, and Jonathan felt the knot in his chest begin to unravel. Before they could relish the moment, sirens wailed, cutting through the remaining tension, and shadows loomed once more, figures stalking toward them from the depths of the alley. Jonathan had to protect these two. "We need to move." The three of them fled, heartbreakingly close to freedom as they dashed toward the patrol cars. The officers rushed to intercept, weapons drawn, uncertainty clouding the air. But as the shadows drew closer, hurling themselves toward Jonathan and the women he would protect at all costs, Jonathan propelled forward. With one fierce push, he shouted to the nearest officer, "They're coming. We need to help." Just as the figures surged forward, officers sprang into action, guns drawn. The scene erupted into chaos yet again. The thuds of pursuing feet crashing against the police's roar. Jonathan felt that adrenaline spike once more. It was execution time for the covert actions he had stumbled into only hours before. Fates clashed as sirens blared and chaos subsided. Jonathan stood, panting heavily under the neon-lit sky, next to the woman and her mother, trembling forms in the aftermath of a nightmare. The woman met his gaze, eyes shimmering with newfound determination. "Thank you," Jonathan smiled, though it was tinged with uncertainty. "We're not done yet." And in those chaotic moments of breathless escape, he understood that the fight wasn't just about his mother, it was about all that he had left. The stakes were high, the world was unrelenting, but together, they would rise to meet whatever lay ahead, hand in hand, hearts ready to face the next chapter. But first, they needed a plan. Because in the wake of this terrifying storm, Jonathan knew he had transformative truth awaiting him, and it was just a matter of unleashing it. As the sun began to peek through the remnants of darkness, Jonathan whispered a promise into the crisp morning air: "It's time to turn the tide." To be continued. Don't wait even one more second. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will change your perspective. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Let us amplify this story. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. We want to hear from you. And don't forget to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Only true fans understand the importance of backing the channel through these actions.